Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to another wonderful tasting with the Virtual Tasting Society. My name is Vadim Perlovsky, and today we're excited to welcome a new distillery, a new brand that we are excited to learn about. Kanosuke, is that right?
Good enough. We
All
go
right,
by Kanosuke. We'll go by Kanosuke, Kanosuke. All works, but properly it's Kanosuke.
Kanosuke. Okay, Kanosuke it is. So we are featuring Kanosuke. Only ever three expressions, as far as I know, three expressions have been released. Only two of them made it to the US, and we're tasting all three of them now. So we're super stoked for this. And we have shochu, correct?
Correct. You
All
got it.
right. I'm really practicing my pronunciation today. But I think I'm gonna get this one. Roland is here to join us and tell us all about this brand. So we're excited to learn. I know he's got some tricks up his sleeve and a tour for us. But I do want to say thank you so much to Chris for helping set this up. I know we've been working on this for months, so thank you for organizing this and always been a supporter of the group. All that said, we're super excited to dive in. It's fairly uncommon to get a Japanese whiskey that comes out of the gate with single malt, 100% malted barley, made in Japan. You know, everything Japanese. So this is very impressive, and I can't wait to taste and learn more. So, Roland, you want to take it away? Or
I
Chris?
think we're going to start with Chris.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna hop in just real fast and just kind of give a little background to you guys. I recognize some of you guys from the last couple we did. I think the last one we did was a minute back, which was Irish whiskey. We are doing two stacks and Killoan, and then prior to that we did Mars. So thank you for you guys for showing up tonight. It's awesome to be back with y'all. Anybody who I haven't met or just needs a refresher, because this is just how it goes. My name's Chris Lane. I work for High Road Spirits. We import Kanosuke as well as a number of other spirits from across the world, but essentially the thrust of our kind of business model is that we only work with family-owned or independently owned distilleries. So to that, this is no different. These guys are incredibly important to us because at least, speaking for myself, Kanosuke kind of is one of the few distilleries coming out of Japan really leading the charge in terms of this kind of new school ethic of how to make whiskey and single malt whiskey that is Japanese. Um, Making a see, we got the all right, we got the slideshow up. Essentially taking the things that are historic in Japanese beverage and then moving those forward into the whiskey space. I will let Roland speak to that. All I'm going to say is that essentially, like with the producers that we work with, especially when you're talking about folks like Mars Hombo, Chichibu, Akeshi, and then Konosuke, as well as a couple others that we're starting to kind of bring into the country. Um, all these guys are kind of in their own way redefining what Japanese whiskey is and can be. These are all 100% Japanese made. These are all made with malted barley. This is not going to be, even though we are going to be talking about shochu, which is a very important building block of specifically Kanosuke's brand and their history, this is not a rice whiskey. Again, I'm not going to speak to good or ill of those particular beverages. I'm just going to say that this is all malted barley. So these are single malt whiskeys. Those are the whiskeys that we typically traffic in. To that, this is a company that is founded in Kagoshima, which you'll see that name kind of pop up a lot right now in Japanese beverage, because really Kagoshima is part of the southernmost island in Japan called Kyushu, which is for lack of a better term, it's kind of like one of the major bread baskets of Japan. It has a massive agricultural component to it. And then specifically in Kagoshima, where this distillery is rooted, as well as other distilleries like Sunuki from Mars, this is kind of the hub of shochu production. And while I think most of us these days, especially in the United States, when we think of something coming from Japan, we're thinking of sake, we're thinking of beer, we're thinking of single malt whiskey or blended whiskeys. But really, Japanese, like the main cultural spirit of Japan, the heart of what it is, really is shochu. And just like was kind of described earlier, shochu, not soju. Soju is a Korean beverage that is distilled as well. Shochu is a distilled beverage from Japan that can come from many things. Classically, it'll come from rice, it'll come from barley, or it'll come from sweet potatoes. It can also be made regionally from sugar or sometimes different types of vegetables other than potatoes. But really, the main kind of three are really going to be rice, barley, and sweet potatoes specifically. And Kagoshima is really a hub for sweet potato shochu. Um, so, without getting too far down the rabbit hole of what shochu is, the important thing to know is that it shares some similar DNA with things like sake and shoyu or soy sauce, which is that it's fermented with koji. Koji is kind of this magical substance that essentially is rice mold. It is a fungus that grows on rice. That's kind of how it kind of comes about. And then there are different types of it, just like you have different strains of yeast, whether you're talking about distiller's yeast or brewer's yeast or champagne yeast. They all kind of do different things, right? So koji is the main fermenting agent in something like shochu. That is kind of like that's the mother. That's where all the kind of the beverage culture kind of comes from, or actually just fermenting culture comes from in Japan specifically. So we'll talk a little bit about that in relation to the shochu that we were going to try first. I'll let Roland deal with that in a minute. But really, it's just this important thing to know that when we're talking about shochu, we're talking about basically a type of shochu that's called honkaku. Honkaku basically just means authentic. In order to be considered authentic shochu, one thing is really important. Well, two things. One, got to be fermented with koji. The second is that it also has to be single distilled. So that's just kind of a nice little bit of geeky stuff when you're talking about beverages, that these are single distilled beverages. Classically, these were not barrel aged. They might be rested in clay or might be rested in stainless steel. That's pretty common. But the barrel aging component we'll talk about in a little bit is pretty important, and that's a major part of Kanosuke's story. So now that I've kind of prattled on about that, I'm going to kick it over to Roland. Roland is a fantastic person. He is the newly appointed GM of Kanosuke for the Americas. So he's got quite a lot on his plate, I would say, right now between the United States and then dipping his toes into South America and the Caribbean, I believe. Eventually, those are all going to kind of be a part of the business model.
Yeah, can't forget our friends in Canada.
Yeah, and then Canada, of course. So Roland is a wonderful knowledge on all things related to whiskey. He as well is in the whiskey club space, running a whiskey club in San Francisco. That is a fantastic group of people. So you guys will probably know a lot of the same folks in common, and there'll be some good crossover. So without further ado, I'm going to kick it over to Roland, and he's going to tell you about Kanosuke.
All right. Hey, thanks, Chris. Thanks, Vadam. And nice to meet everybody tonight. I think I recognize some names from other tastings. As Chris mentioned, I am part of the whiskey community. And in the States, we'd call them whiskey nerds. In Japan, I'll try to teach you a little Japanese as we go forward. It's called otaku. Otaku can be used for manga, can be used for anime, but there's this growing whiskey otaku in Japan, which is the whiskey needs, the nerds, the geeks. And when I do any of these classes, I always try to speak to the geek, because we always have the questions that no one wants to ask or no one wants to answer, because you'll probably get somebody, I'm not blaming other brands, but, somebody not like Chris who can't tell you what kind of koji is being used or can't tell you what kind of yeast is being used. That's where we want to dig in. And frankly, a lot of mystery around Japanese whiskey has been that the brands haven't been transparent. They're making whiskey. It just may not be single malt, which is fine. But what we try to do is be, and again, like Chris, we won't speak ill will about other brands, but we're going to be very transparent as much as we can about what we're doing, about the resource we're using, the ingredients we're using. And throughout this presentation, we'd love for you to ask questions. If you can put it in chat, and if I don't see it, Chris or Vadam can stop me, or during the tour, feel free to ask Hiromi-san questions. We've already prepped her. and she's excited to do this, but it's going to be her first time. So be nice to her. And if you're nice, she'll show you everything you want to see in the distillery and more. It's a beautiful place that we invite you to visit. Just a little more background on me. Again, I'm part of the whiskey community. I'm not a lifer, as they say. I just joined Kanosuke about 2 months ago, and frankly, the comparison I would give, I kind of consider myself like Kelly Clarkson in that I was a fan, and now I'm in the business, one day to the next. I've never done any other work in the business, but excited to really support this brand. It's a brand that I've been following since their inception in 2018, and really be glad to be part of the family now. So any questions, stop me, ping me, yell at me. Hey, dude works. But we want to make sure you get all your questions answered. So I have a lot of slides. I'm going to cover as many as I can. Happy to go slower, faster, depending on what you want. But let me talk a little bit about Kanosuke. So as soon as I get my slides working. Our company is actually founded under a larger conglomerate group. As Chris mentioned, our parent company is called Komasa Gyozo, which essentially means the soju distillery from the Komasa family. We've been making soju, and even before that, making sake for the region for over 140 years. And the founder of our distillery, Komasa-san, his grandfather, Kanosuke, which you'll recognize that name. I'll come back in a second. Was the one that pioneered the changes in the distillery that allowed us to eventually become a whiskey making company 5 years ago, or actually 7 years ago, in 2017. So these are just some pictures of our soju distillery. The red flag you see that's our historical family distillery, which is where everything started. It has still the pot still that they started with, and below is the Hioki distillery, which you will hear that name again. That's where we make our grain whiskey and also our soju. Okay, so why are we talking about soju? As Chris mentioned, soju is the national spirit of Japan. People think about sake, and sake is a great drink, but it's brewed. So the national distilled spirit is soju, which, as Chris mentioned, is either made in Kagoshima, traditionally made out of either rice, barley, or sweet potato, which we call imo, I-M-O. Okay, but soju is not and I don't think I'm going very far to say that it is not a very refined spirit. It's a spirit that you drink to, feel pretty good, and it's cheap. It's kind of like I would liken it to moonshine, or what's the one in Ireland? Poitin. I'm sure I'm saying that wrong. Poitin, like the curds. Sorry.
Poaching.
Thank you.
Got to be careful. You get it mixed up with poutine, and we're back to Canada,
which I like a lot. And then we're back to Canada. You're right. But Kanosuke Komasa, he was the second generation of our distillery, and after the war, he was charged with taking over the family business. And what he realized was, Kyushu is very famous for making soju. You can probably not go more than 10 minutes without hitting a soju distillery, some big, some small. But he realized that there was a price limitation on what he could garner for selling this spirit. And they were making all of them. They were making rice, they were making barley, they were making emo, they were making blended, they were making specially aged editions. But he said, what he realized was there's a gap here. In order for me to kind of think about lowering or increasing the price point on this, I need to think differently about this liquid. So he kind of scoured the spirits landscape, and what he figured out was, most spirits that were darker in color commanded a premium on the market, like whiskey, like tequila, etc. So he started to experiment with. He said, "What a good idea! Let me think about how I can age soju." The problem with that was that soju has a color component as one of the regulations around how soju can be sold. in fact, clarity matters. So the cleaner and lighter a soju looked, there's a limit to where you could bring a soju with some color and allow it to be sold as soju versus just a neutral spirit. So he spent many years thinking about this and finally introduced a product that we call mellowed Kuzaru, which is essentially a barrel rested soju product, which completely changed the game in Kagoshima initially, and then all of Japan in terms of how people were looking at soju as this kind of basic rock gut kind of get you drunk spirit. So he was the one that pioneered that and had a plan to bring that to the world. That never really happened, but it kind of set in motion the way that we think about distilled spirits. So I've done a bunch of these things, and I know a lot of times we end up talking a lot without tasting. So I'm going to ask you to taste your first spirit, which should be the mellowed Kuzaru. I want you to taste that because it's going to be important in terms of how we talk about the rest of the liquid that we're going to share tonight, and then into the future of what Kanosuke is doing. So if everybody has it and hasn't poured it, please pour it out in your Glencairn. To let you know that this is special because this is not available in the US. I hand carried all these back from Japan last month, and I begrudgingly sent the bottle to Bottom because he said, you guys got to give me something special. So we conceded, and you should see it. Here's what the bottle looks like. It's a black bottle. You'll see that the crest on the bottle itself, that's a stylized crane. So Kozaru means small in Japanese, and Zuru is a kind of slang way of saying crane. And so mellowed Kozaru means mellowed little crane. And the story for that is that when Kanosuke Sr. was a child, he would see this crane that would come into the family garden every day at the same time and would just stay there and was so calm, and until a fish would come by or a bird would come by and he would swoop up and grab it. So he loved this name of crane, and that's why he named this expression mellowed Kozaru. So please try it. I'd love to hear your feedback on any of the taste and the flavors. If it's something familiar to you, if it tastes like whiskey, doesn't taste like whiskey, what's it taste like?
Roland, real fast, can you speak a little bit to the proof on this? Because this is unique, especially in shochu.
Yeah, so it's 41%, which for us whiskey drinkers, we would think this is kind of a low proof whiskey, but most sojus are kind of in the 20s and 30s. So this is, his Kanosuke-san's vision for a cask strength soju. Any thoughts on the taste or the nose? We have some notes here from our distiller. I actually think they're quite accurate. For me, I get a lot of that vanilla and honey. The umami really comes out like that flavor that you don't know what it is, but there's something there. Don't everybody speak at once. I know you're excited.
Oh, sorry, please go ahead.
Oh, that's okay. I was just going to say, I got a lot of elderflower on the nose.
Yep.
I wasn't really paying any attention to the screen, and I looked up and I'm like, well, good, I nailed one. But on the palate, I get like a caramel banana bread kind of flavor. It's got a really nice, umami to it. It's really quite lovely. I've not had one before, so.
Yeah, if you taste just kind of white soju, it's a lot different. I think Chris can agree that you'll get a lot more funk on that nose and kind of first taste. This is, mellowed is a very, very good term to describe what the wood has done to this versus, keeping it in aged clay casks underground in kind of open fermentation and aging.
Another thing that you'll get on a lot of shochu, I think maybe a little bit less so on rice shochu, but definitely if you have like a sweet potato shochu, like imo, the flavor of koji can come through, and it can read as that's some of the umami that you're getting is actually that koji fermentation. And to me, it reads sometimes as like it can almost be a little bit like dusty cocoa powder. It can be kind of mushroomy, like if you think of like candy cap mushroom, like it's got a little bit of that flavor to it. So while I don't actually have this one in front of me, I think that when I had it last, it seemed like that kind of like lovely vanilla and banana flavor kind of like really married nicely with those more kind of like earthy components that you get from that koji.
Yep. Very good.
I get a
Right.
real nice salinity through it that makes me
Yeah.
want to sort of keep revisiting and drinking it, which I like.
Good. Good.
Yeah, get almost like a portobello earthiness in there.
Yeah. Yeah, all these are really, really good thoughts. And again, the reason why we wanted you to taste this, when we will come back to, is that we use some of these same barrels now that have aged soju. And by the way, even though it's so light in color, I'm sure you guys can see it's like a light straw color. We still have to comply with the color clarity regulation for soju, so it meets that. But this has been aged somewhere between 5 to 10 years. So it's a kind of distiller secret in terms of how we do it. But that imparts a lot of the mellowing flavor, and then in return, the casks are wonderful and add a different kind of flavor profile to our whiskey, which you'll try shortly. All right, I'm going to move on. This is Kamasa-san, our CEO and founder. He's standing in front of our still room, which we have three stills, which Hiromu-san will talk about shortly when we take you guys on the tour. But I want to bring everything back to the story that we started. The reason why Kanosuke Komasa is so important is because this was his vision when he started the Mellow Kokuzaru, was that I'm going to build a foundation of a distillery that would make soju for the world, that would sit right on this beach that overlooks the South China Sea, that has a tasting center, it has aging warehouse, has distillery, it has a restaurant. And the top was this drawing that he made in the 1980s. The bottom is the piece of land that he imagined it going into. And before he passed away, we couldn't finish it, but he started the aging warehouses. And finally, when his grandson, our founder, built the whiskey distillery, he built it exactly where his grandfather envisioned the soju distillery being, but he made a much more modern building. So you see that building fitting into that little circle there. So it kind of just rounds out the story of Kanosuke's vision for what he wanted for the property, and now his son Komasa-san his grandson has built that vision and completed that vision. Okay, so what is Kanosuke? So Kanosuke, as you can probably imagine or make the connection, Komasa-san named the distillery, the whiskey distillery, after his grandfather. So Kanosuke is the name of Komasa-san's grandfather, and that's the name of our single malt distillery. And the concept of the whiskey that we're making is much like the soju that we're making, is that, and again, it may not translate well into English, but when we talk about our whiskey, we talk about the mellow land producing a mellow whiskey. And what we mean about mellow whiskey is that we want the whiskey to be richer and more drinkable early than other spirits that you may be tasting. And because I think of the flavor that the barrel imparts, you get that kind of early umami and earthiness, but that rounding really helps a young whiskey feel like it's been aged a lot longer. And given the conditions we have to age right on that South China Sea, you're going to get that kind of roundness early. There's a little bit of an Easter egg here because there's a bottle that's showing here that is not available in the US yet, and that's our flagship single malt, which Chris and I will talk about later. But that's going to be coming to the market later, which will be our first flagship expression, along with a few others. But you'll get an idea of kind of where we're headed directionally with what we think about our whiskey. You're going to get different types of expressions that are going to express what we think we can get from our terroir. Okay. Any questions? All right, Chris mentioned that we're on the South Island of Kyushu. Does everybody know where Kyushu is? Or has anybody been there? If you've been there, bonus points. Kyushu is the southernmost island in Japan. As you know, Japan is actually a chain of large islands. Honshu being the biggest island, which is where Tokyo is. But our distilleries are on Kyushu, which is the southernmost island. As Chris said, they are the belly of Japan. All of the best, beef and pork, chicken, vegetables all come from Kyushu. It's a land where everyone wants to go to retire if you live in the hustle bustle of Tokyo. But it also is kind of the heart and soul of soju making. But now, since the new licensing regulations have happened, it's becoming the hub for growth of Japanese whiskey. So, you've heard the name Mars, you've heard the name Kanosuke now, but you'll hear a lot more coming from both southern and northern Kyushu, where distillers that were making soju are now coming with lots and lots of whiskey, which is fantastic for us because I think it's going to create a tourism boom along the lines of what you saw in Napa very early and what you're seeing in Scotland now and in Kentucky with the Bourbon Trail, where I think whiskey tourism is going to pick up. It's a fantastic island, and I highly encourage you to go if you've never had a chance. Think about that on your next trip to Japan. To spend a couple days in Kyushu. We'll be happy to host you at the distillery. Okay, just to give you some facts about the distillery, the climate. It gets very hot. It gets very cold. And Hiromi-san will speak to that later when she takes you on a tour of the distillery. This is the picture of our backyard on the right. This is right behind the distillery, which overlooks the South China Sea. And then on the left is, if you look down that cliff, that's what you're going to see, which is the third longest continuous sandy beach in Japan. Another view of the beach is absolutely gorgeous if you ever get a chance to go. And a view of the distillery. When we talk about Meadowland, we also it's a reference to our sunset. So this side of the country, ironically, when people think about Japan, they talk about the land of the rising sun. In fact, Kyushu, and particularly this southernmost part of Kyushu, Hioki City, which is exactly where is the city where our distillery is located, it actually directly translates to the land where the sun sets. So the irony is Japan is the land of the rising sun, but Hioki in Kagoshima is where we see the sun setting. And it's going to be a theme that you're going to see in all of our products. Those round circles are representative of the sun, and you'll see that as we kind of talk about our next expressions and how the sun plays a major role in how we look at not only the whiskey but as part of our tasting bar and our customer experience. Okay, last item before we get to the tour and more tasting is that, as I mentioned, we're the third longest continuous sandy beach in Japan. We also happen to be the native home and hatchery for Japanese loggerhead turtles. So during the spring months, you'll see a lot of people visiting and trying to get a glimpse of them as they come up and lay their eggs. But again, just like they are in the US, they are protected species, and we're very happy to have them on our beach. And if we could feed them our whiskey, I think we would, to help them encourage strength and growth. Okay, with that, I'm going to move on to our next expression because, again, as a consumer, I'm always concerned you have drinks in your hands. So take the first edition 2021. This is what the bottle looks like if you haven't seen it. And please pour yourself a dram of that. And as you kind of get that poured, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this over to our distillery team. Hiromi-san, I think Hiromi-san's on. There you are. We can't hear you yet, Hiromi.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you now.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing so we can focus on Hiromi-san.
Okay. Hi.
Hello.
こうかな Hello. Can you see?
I'm gonna spotlight you 1 second. There you go.
Okay.
There we
Okay.
go.
There you go.
Okay. So, hi. Sorry. Hi, I'm Hiromi.
Hi,
Hello.
Hiromi.
Can you see? Hi. So
Yes.
I'm your guide today.
Yay! Thank you.
Yay. Thank you.
Thanks,
So
Hiromi-san.
welcome to our distillery.
Hey, Hiromi, maybe we can turn around and show everybody the warehouses first, and then you can kind of take your way up to past the
Okay.
distillery and to the tasting.
Okay. So welcome to our distillery. And welcome. Thank you for how can I say? Thank you for gathering with our distillery tour in virtual. So can you see the steel tank at the hilltop side?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. So our parents' company is shochu company. So you can see the steel tank at the hilltop side. All of them contain the shochu, especially rice shochu there, not whiskey. And then, can you see maybe behind the tanks? We have warehouses, 4 buildings there. So that they are all warehouse for whiskey. But next to the steel tank, you can see also the one building. It's for a warehouse for rice shochu. So as Roland said, our parents' company, they are aging shochu in casks. なんか聞こえてますか？大丈夫ですかね？
That's great. Thank you.
Okay, can you? Okay, so here's our building. You can see the U-shaped building, right?
Yep.
Yes, yep. So at the left side of the building is manufacturing area. So I'll show you later, like machine, fermentation, and distillation here. And then the right side of the building is small warehouse. So you can see the barrel after that. And then center of the building is our shop. So the reason why we built like this U-shaped building is that we want to welcome warmly like hug. Okay, so let's go upstairs. I will explain about our history a little bit. Oh, you can see the constructing building there. So we will build a new second distillery and warehouses. Oh, I didn't tell you. Yeah,
That's
I
one of
didn't
the
tell you.
secrets that's one of the secrets that we promised you.
Sorry.
No one else knows. No, it's actually great, Hiromi. I was going to mention
Is that
it.
okay? Okay.
Glad that you showed it. I promised the
Okay,
team that
so-
we would get some secrets. So great that you showed it. Uh-oh, I think we may have lost her for a minute. There she goes.
Yeah.
Through the magical doors.
See. Oh yeah. Can you smell the whiskey? Yeah. So actually, we can smell a little bit about the processing of making whiskey. Okay, here, our Kanosuke history. So you can see the map of Japan. Here is Tokyo, and Kagoshima is here. And our distillery is located in the western part of Kagoshima Prefecture. And in front of our building, we have Long Beach, one of the longest beaches in Japan. It's called Fukiagehama. Yeah. So as Roland said, thank you. As Roland said, we have very climate. I mean, like in summer it's so hot, it exceeds over 30 degrees Celsius, but in winter it's low, under 0 degrees Celsius. So manufacturing, manufacturing is so quick. So
Hiromi-san, I think the volume is not as clear. I know you are using you switched to Mami-san's camera.
yeah.
It's a little bit tough to hear you that way.
Okay.
I think what you were doing before was okay. Does
Okay, can
everyone
you
agree?
hear me?
That's much better. Can everybody give
Okay,
me a
sorry.
thumbs up? Does that sound better? Okay,
Okay.
perfect.
Okay, so here is a picture of the first owners. So we started our shochu company in 1880s. So at first, our first owner made sake for gods, especially using rice for shochu. Yeah, second owner is Mr. Kanosuke. You know him because our distillery's name is named after him. So when he was young, he had to go to the war, like Asian countries, for 10 years. So during the war, he learned how to make high-class spirits, and especially by using casks. So when he came back to Kagoshima, he wanted to make aged shochu cask. So in 1957, Mr. Kanosuke started to sell this product, Merod Kozuru. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
they were able to taste it earlier, Hiromi-san.
yes. Okay, so maybe you drank Japanese shochu before, right?
I think this was the first time for many.
Yeah, really. So normally, shochu has no color, clear. But as you can see, this shochu has color. You know, it had amber color. So, like in 1957, in those days, people in Kagoshima didn't like it because it has color. So people said that was not shochu, but tasting is very good. And the alcohol percent of this shochu was quite different. Normally, shochu has a 25% alcohol, but this shochu had 41%. But tasting is very, very good. For Wizard Kagoshima Prefecture's people liked it for gifts. And you know the name of the product, Merod Kozuru. Merod Kozuru. Kozuru means kid crane. I'm so sorry, I forgot to bring the crane, but I'll show you later. Okay, so here is a blueprint. Maybe we are here. And as I said, at the hilltop side, we have 4 buildings for warehouse, whiskey warehouse. And then now, maybe top secret, but we are constructing other buildings here. Because Kanosuke had a dream. He wanted to make like amusement park for this shochu. But he couldn't his dream at all. So, as you know, our owner, Mr. Yoshitsugu, and his younger brother wanted to his dream. But, we got the prizes, actually. But shochu is not famous in the world, especially in European countries. So they thought we had casks. And then our owner went to the United States and Scotland to learn how to make like traditional way of making whiskey. And then we started our distillery, Kanosuke Distillery, in 2018. Okay, so are you ready to go to the how can I say, machine and fermentation floor?
Yes, we are.
Yeah. Okay, so this is a machine tank. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, okay. This is a machine tank. Now it's working. You can see the tank inside. The malted barley is our main ingredient of making whiskey. So next to the building, we have a huge milling machine. So through this white pipe, we add malt to this machine tank and with hot water. You can see the word here. As I said, we grind the malt like half, grapes, flour. So we grind the malt we grind three types of this malt. And mainly we imported the malt from Scotland, sometimes Belgium, Australians, and we are using the domestic one too. Okay, so can you see the side glass here?
Yep.
Yeah. So mashmen have to check the color of the words because mashing is very, very important for Kanosuke to get clear words. So you can see the machine here. We check and we calculate the color of the data. Okay, and sorry, it's a little bit noisy. You can
It's
see
actually
the
fine.
okay. You can see the layer of the words. So you can see husk, grease, flour, and hot water here. So the mashmen have to check the layer of the word and check the color. Okay. Okay, so when we finish the filtering, it's watered down to the vessel. It's empty now because they just started. Okay, so when we finish the filtering, through the pipe, we transfer the words to the fermentation tanks here. Don't you think it's weird? You can only see the top of the tanks, right? Because as I said, our parent company is a shochu company. So the shochu company is using these kind of styles. Especially they are making handmade shochu. At shochu distillery, they are using earth pot. It's very good for us, visitors, and also good for workers. Because normally the worker have to climb, go up the ladders, but we do not need to go up the ladders. We have stairs. And then when we finish when we transfer the board to these vessels, we add ease from the top. It's easier to monitor the board well. And normally, okay.
I was just going to say, this is, as Hiromi-san said, this is one of the innovations that we brought to whiskey making from
Sorry,
making.
shochu make, yes.
Right.
Shochu craft, yeah. And then, yeah. So normally it takes 3 to 4 days to finish the fermentation, but we need 5 days because we want to get the beautiful lactic acid bacteria. So on the 4th day or 5th day, the appearance of lactic acid bacteria. It smells like sour, but it's good for distill. So on the 3rd day or 4th day, the alcohol percent becomes 7 to 8, like beer. Okay, so do you want to see the inside?
Sure.
Okay.
Can we taste it?
Okay. Can you see the inside?
I can smell it.
Yeah, you can smell it. It's like fruity and yeah, it smells so good. This pot is on the 2nd day. You can see the bubbles. Oops, be careful to smell it because the alcohol is becoming. Okay. When you visit our distillery, you can see these kind of panels too. Okay, so let's go to the distillation room. So as I said, our owner went to Scotland, so we are using the Scotch style. So in Scotch style, at most we distill twice, but we set the distillation pots, the 3 pot stills here, because we want to get the many kinds of aromas and flavors. This one is a fast distillation pot. For now, it's empty. Sorry. The worker just started to work the 2nd distillation here. Okay, so there are 3 types of the pot stills here. They have different sizes, different shapes, different angles. Okay, so the fast distillation pot we distill about for 5 hours. The alcohol percent becomes 20%. On the 2nd time, we separated the spirits, the central one and the most light side. We said this center of the pot still is spirit still 1, and the right side is spirit still 2. The angle and the shape of the pot stills are quite different. SS1 it's easier. The spirit can go up easier to go to the condenser. But at the most right side, this pot still has like lantern shape. So it's not easier to go up, and the angle is upper. So behind the condenser, you can see the steel tank there. They are all condenser. Inside the steel tank, we have warm tube. Like the pipe is look like coils.
Yeah, so this is a pretty unique setup that we have. That we have 3 stills. Most distilleries, frankly, across the globe have 2 at most, a wash still and a spirit still. But because the way that we have built them in terms of the different shapes and line arm angles, it allows us to kind of mix and match to get different kind of spirit flavors. And we can actually, like during COVID, when there wasn't much whiskey being made, we didn't even have to use our wash still. We actually used the first spirit still as the wash still. But this allows us to get different flavor profiles from the same ferment, right? So once the spirit comes off the spirit still, you can put half of it in the spirit still 1 and the other half spirit still 2. And because of the size of the neck, you get either a rich type or a light type whiskey.
Okay, so normally, yeah, many together.
Sorry,
So then-
there's a question.
And then you combine the 2 whiskey types. So at the end of the day, all your whiskey is double distilled, right? It's not like 2.3 like some distilleries.
Correct. Now we
Yes.
may combine them. We don't have to. It's at the discretion of distillers in terms of what they're running that day, in terms of what profiles they want to achieve. But it's not a rule that they're all that they're always combined.
Yeah, you don't need. Yeah. So normally many other distilleries has glasses, but here stuff only, but you can see our pot stills easily. But please do not touch it.
They're a little warm.
Yeah, so hot. Oh, you can see my supervisor here. Actually, I was working here last year with him. Okay, so you can see the spirit safe here. So when we finish the distillation, it's watered down to this spirit safe. But now they just started to work, so we cannot see the water down to the spirit safe. So when I was working here, I thought it looked like faucet. So, you know, the spirit has no color. It's like water. But I smelled it. It had, strong smelling. It's like the alcohol percent was 75. I was so surprised to, smell it. So as you know, we only got the middle part of low wine. So the alcohol percent is like 59 or 63. Now we got the 63. Okay, so let's go to the small warehouse. Oh, here are 5 more tanks here. Okay, until last year, we are casting at the first floor. But as you know, in front of our building, we have a beach. It grows. So we check the percentage of enjoyed share. That was 14. So higher, of course. So we were so surprised and we moved to the hilltop side. Okay, can you see Mr. Kanosuke? Yeah, so I thought he looked like, Disney movie Up. So I thought he looked like him, Mr. Khan, with
He
his shochu. Yeah, with his shochu, Melod Kozuru.
I'm sure he's much happier than a gentleman in Up, drinking soju and looking down at us making whiskey in his honor.
Yeah. Okay. So here is Mr. Yoshitsugu. This is New York Times in 2020. You can see the scenery of the garden. Here, our small storage room. Can you see the bedrooms? Okay, so
I think this is one of 6 or 7 aging facilities we have. This was the
yes.
first one built, which is the smallest one. But actually, that cask right there that Horme-san is pointing at, that's our oldest cask.
Yes, that's the oldest case. For about 7 years.
Yeah.
Okay, the first row, you can see the barrels. They are all sherry casks, sherry barrels. And the second rows, you can see the bigger ones. They are all ex-shochu casks. I mean, it's our parents' company is using American white oak, virgin oak for light shochu, Melod Kozuru. So after bottling the light shochu, we shave a little and char inside like this. And we bottle our whiskey. Okay, so we are using the Richard cask. And then tiny ones are bourbon casks. So the majority of our casks are sherry casks, ex-shochu casks, bourbon casks, and wine casks. So now we are aging casks about 5,000 in total. So here is a small storage room, but as I said, we have 4 buildings at the hilltop side. And our parents' company bought elementary school. So elementary school has gym. So we are aging these kind of casks at the gym. Any question?
Yeah, this is perfect. Thank you very much.
Ex-elementary school cask. Yes, it's ex-elementary school. Yeah. We are. How can I say?
I'll cover that during. I'll cover that.
Okay.
Q&A. Yeah.
Do you have any Mizunara casks?
Yes. We do.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't believe in that warehouse, but we have them in another. But we have them in another location.
Okay. Their certification. Now we finally reached the bar, mellow bar. So our concept is mellow land, mellow whiskey. Are you ready to enjoy our bar? Okay. Here is our bar.
If you all go for a tour and tasting, you'll finish here at the Mellow Bar. And I can tell you it's absolutely gorgeous. It's a little bit overcast today, so you can't see the sea as well. But on a clear day, it is impressive. some nice jazz and some great Kanosuke whiskey, you'll have a fantastic afternoon.
What's the lineup? Just curious. What are we looking at? The shochu, obviously.
That's our Melikazaru and our single cask.
Yes.
That's our
Yeah.
limited
This
edition.
one. Yeah. This one is Merokozubu and single malt
Oh,
Kanosuke.
sorry, single malt. Yeah, sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, so there's the shochu, the single malt, and what are those for?
Yeah.
That's the new one that's coming out, right? The
New one. Yeah. Oh, yeah. They are or the limited edition.
yes.
Yes.
Yeah, that new version, we're looking at that in a California release. Hopefully, probably by the time it actually cycles through retail, maybe 3 weeks.
Yeah, we do not have yet.
Beautiful.
Thank you. So in
Love
front
that the
of our
first
bar,
record is
yeah.
Tom Waits.
Yes, Tom Waits, yes. And you can see not the beautiful today because yeah, it looks like Island, right? But the ocean is the East Sea, not Pacific Ocean.
That's beautiful. Thank you. Can you do me a favor? Can
Yes.
you turn the camera around so that we can see you and Mami-san so that everyone can say hi and thank you?
Okay. Can you see?
Hi. So
I'm
everyone
sorry.
say hi to.
I was so nervous, so
Oh,
I
you did
couldn't
great.
tell you all of the things.
You did great. So if you ever visit
Thank you.
visit the distillery,
Hi.
Hiruma-san and Mami-san, who's on the right, she's responsible for all of our customer experience, and Hiruma-san is on our team and does an excellent job of giving tours. In fact, she gave me my first tour in December, and I was so impressed that I asked her to help lead this tour. So you guys are her first audience, so give her a round of applause for doing an awesome job.
Thank you. Thank you for.
Arigato, Horomi-san.
Arigato.
Any questions? Any questions
Yeah.
for either Hirumi-san or Mami-san?
Mami-san.
You can either type them or just ask.
Yeah.
So this distillery was built in 2017?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Well, finished in 2017.
So it was built to be a visitor center and distillery in one right away, or is that something that came after?
Correct. But we didn't anticipate the demand so quickly. That's why you saw the image of our second distillery and warehouse being built quickly.
Yes. 1 hour tour we're. Roland?
Yes.
Okay. Can I show you our shop?
Yeah.
Please.
Okay.
Please do.
Okay. Okay. When we finish the when the guest finish the tasting, we can downstairs.
Maybe show a picture from the top first.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Okay, show from the bottom.
Okay.
It's okay.
Are you? Okay, you can see the garden like this. Here is our shop. Can you see? Oh, hi, Mr. Ishihara.
It's Tatsu Ishihara, our finance
Yes.
director and brand ambassador. And he's running away because he's shy.
Okay, yeah. And, the tiny pot still here. Also, we are selling the distillery's exclusive, the tiny bottles.
Yeah, so we always try to keep it interesting. We always
Yes.
keep limited edition bottles at our distillery that are not sold elsewhere, so that when people come, they can find something special.
Yes.
If you look under your chairs at home,
Okay.
there will not be a limited distillery
You can
bottle.
see, you can see the chairs. You can buy the chairs too by using casks.
Yeah.
Hey. Hey. Miku. Hi, Miku. And here's a series of our whiskey.
Ooh, what's the 2023? Is that coming to the US too?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So, as you know, I'm wearing the t-shirts, like stylish t-shirts. When you visit us, you can also buy the t-shirts and caps and jackets too. Okay, thank you for coming.
All righty.
Thank
Do we
you.
have
Yeah.
other questions for?
Any questions?
Whenever you were showing the three stills, it looked like the center one, the arm on it was pointing downward more. Is that just an optical illusion or is it actually downward?
No, it's actually not. It's good catch. That's the first spirit still. And the reason why it's pointing downwards because, and if you notice the base of the pot still is actually a larger base. That's because we want a more rich type whiskey, which means you let more of the gas escape more easily and condense that arm immediately. So you get more of the, let's just call it stuff coming from the distillate. So when you get distillate or gas, it's not all clean, right? You get other particles. When you have when you try to make a rich whiskey, you want more of that flavor and the fats and the oils to come up, and those are heavier. So you need to give it an easier path down, if you will, versus a light type whiskey where you want more of a cleaner and lighter flavor. You want to eliminate some of those oils and fats. So that's exactly why, and you're correct in noticing it, that it's an easier path for the distillate to slide down, if you will.
All right, thank you, Roland.
Sure. All right. If no other questions for
while we're looking at all those expressions, can you tell us about those the expressions, the bottles, what is each one? I'm just curious.
Sure. So the top section, that's
Let her do it. She's there.
Okay. Hiromi, do you want to cover what those bottles are?
Okay, so they are all distillery exclusive. Especially they are all cask strength. Oh, now on sale is virgin oak, the American white oak. And last time we sold, it's like richer bourbon, sherry, and yeah, bourbon cognac, yeah, bourbon, wine, Calvados.
Calvados?
Yeah, something like that.
And the first one was new make?
Yeah, new make, yes.
The clear one is new make?
Yeah.
Newborn. These are what, 200 ml?
Yes, 200 milliliter bottles.
And so when you run peated malt through your still, how long?
Yes, only this one, the peated malt.
So is that, do you clean the stills afterwards, after every peated run, or how does that work? How often do you do peated?
How can I say? Like how can I say the process of making the level of the peat?
No, I'm saying after you do a peated run, the smell of peat is going to be on the still.
Yes. So last year we were producing the peated ones, but now is producing the non-peated.
Okay.
So yeah, last month we cleaned very hard, and now are non-peated.
It's a beautiful rainbow.
Thank you. So 20% of our malt is peated, but the majority of our malts is a non-peated one.
Okay.
Thank you. So cute, right?
Yes. And what is the one in the middle? The white one? That's the new one that's coming out. That's the single. The middle white one. What is that?
Oh, yeah. The middle one
Yes.
is single malt Kanosuke, like this.
They're all single malt.
Yeah, this one, the original product.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is a new one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. This is a single grain whiskey.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Hioki pot still. What does that mean?
Yes, Hioki pot stills. Because we are making this whiskey at our parents' company, shochu company. It's called Hioki. And our city's name is also Hioki too. Hioki means sunset. Beautiful name, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
How is it
So
that
you can see the levels. So beautiful, like sunset from the bar.
Gotcha.
Ah, thank you.
With your whiskeys always being bottled to cask strength, how are they always an even, like a round number, or do you guys just round to a near?
So in near future we will do like that, but now we do not like that. Not all. This one is cask strength, but we mix the American white oak and virgin oak.
Gotcha.
What was your question, Bottom? I didn't understand the question about around.
Well, that was I can ask you this later. I was just curious that, you know, we're drinking at cask strength, but they're 57, 58, 59, and 55. How are they getting it right on the nose? Adding
Sorry,
water?
now it's 62.
Well, remember, all whiskeys are batched, right?
Yeah.
So
Yes,
we're going to use a variety of
batch,
barrels. And
yeah, barrels.
cask strength simply means, I mean, cask strength is kind of a generic term, like all natural.
Yeah.
Where, you know, we're putting it at probably the highest cask, the highest strength that we feel comfortable with. So it's not going to be in your 40s, but it's going to be somewhere in your high 50s or 60s. So there may be a tiny bit of water that's added. It doesn't take away from it being strong, but it'll allow us to either mellow the blend or get it to a pointed number. Now, that pointed number may just be by coincidence, or it was Nakamura-san's intent. But again, it doesn't take away from the fact that it's very, very strong whiskey.
Yes.
And good whiskey too. Awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah. We do not add water anymore. Yeah, this one we add water. Yeah, any question about our distillery or our whiskey?
Where's the nearest place to spend the night around there? Ah, there's a crane.
This is green, yes. So Miku holds the papers. But sorry, I forgot to bring to our history panels.
It's beautiful.
The nearest place to stay is that you'd want to stay is in Kagoshima City, which is about a 40 to 45-minute drive from the distillery.
Oh wow. So solid distance. You guys don't have room and board there.
Not yet. Hold that thought.
Okay. I like a good bed and breakfast at a distillery.
Yeah.
Do you have a restaurant on site? A lot of distilleries now are putting in fantastic restaurants.
Not yet, but hold that thought.
Team, they just got started.
Yeah. Thank you. Whoever said that, thank you. All right. I think if there's no more questions, we've taken enough time from Hiromi and Mami-san. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll let you drop. You can feel free to stay on if you want, but we will give you the bird not presenting it anymore. Thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Arigatou gozaimasu.
Bye-bye.
Okay, go back to my screen. All right, how was that, everybody? Did you enjoy that?
That was awesome. Thank you so much.
That was pretty
That was
awesome.
great. Yeah.
All right, so you heard. I'm gonna just do this one slide and we're gonna drink again because I'm sure you're thirsty. You heard Hiromi-san talk about recharred cask. When she talks about recharred cask, it's not any specific cask that we are recharring. We're using the ex-soju cask that you tried earlier that have been used for at least 10 years. And we take that to a local cooperage called Ariake, and they rechar it for us, and we bring it back for whiskey maturation. So when we say rechar, people may say just rechar. They're specific. At least we are specifically referring to the ex-soju casks. Others may rechar other casks, but that's what we're using. And that I think that gives us a very different taste profile and a differentiation in our whiskey. So with that said, pour your next whiskey, please, which should be your second edition 2021. Again, a very special whiskey that was never brought to the US. So you're getting these as once in a lifetime tasting samples from Japan. But the reason why we wanted to share this, and thanks to Chris for sending it out, was that it's a very different profile than the first limited edition from 2021. If you have a little bit of that left, it's really good to try these side by side. This is quite a bit sweeter, but it still has that, what we call that Kanosuke profile, which is that umami back note that's really just wants you to keep tasting over and over again. And again, I think that the taste notes are quite true on this one. I get a lot of green apple myself, and I do get a lot of that kind of citrus, almost like a citrus peel. And there was a question asked, I think, on chat earlier about the type of cask we use. So as you know, even if it's a cask-strength whiskey, and we produce it as a limited edition, what we're doing is our master blender, who's our founder, he and his blending team actually are taking distillate or whiskey from all different types of casks, and we use not only the rechar cask, but we use a lot of bourbon cask, we use a lot of sherry cask, and we use a lot of red wine cask. And what we highlighted on these tasting notes is what we call the key cask, meaning you're going to get more bourbon cask in this expression than the first expression, which was mostly rechar soju. Well, not mostly, but a lot of it. So that's kind of where we won't tell you exactly our blend, but because it just changes all the time, it doesn't actually mean anything. But we will use more bourbon in this one, and then when we talk about the sherry or the 2022, it will be sherry.
Roland, is there also red wine cask in this as well?
Yes.
Okay, I can taste that.
Yeah.
I've already gone through the 3 whiskeys, and now I'm coming back for a second round.
Wow, teacher's pet, huh? I love it.
That was a long tour, and I had to drink something.
Get thirsty. I get it.
What I found interesting was that the first time around, when I had this one, it was so jarring compared to the first edition. And this one, it feels a bit disjointed. Now the second time around, it's less disjointed, but I'm just curious to know if anybody else is kind of tasting what I'm tasting, which is, it doesn't quite stick together. You kind of get different personalities showing through here, whereas the first one was a little bit, I don't have words. Sorry, folks. I'm terrible at this. People like Jason would know exactly what words to use here. But anyway,
it's actually a very, very, very fair comment that I can say that the 2021 second edition was the most polarizing of the limited editions that we've done to date in terms of people liking it or not like it. I personally very, very much like it. In fact, it's my favorite of all of the 3 that have been released so far, because it has that, you're right, it's kind of a bipolar character. I like it because it surprises me. And I think calling it disjointed is fair, but I just like that it's very different than, it's not what I would expect from a whiskey. And that made me like it. But again, everybody has different tastes, and there's nothing wrong with anybody's view. It's just different.
So like I said, the first time around, it was just jarring. And the second time around, it's actually less jarring and more interesting.
Yeah.
So I guess what I want to point that out to folks in case they're having the same difficulty I had the first time I tasted it. But now, I kind of taste bourbon initially and then red wine on the way out. And I really, the barrels sort of come through in my mind. Again, I'm curious to hear what other people think.
I think also something that's interesting about these two, and this good thing to remember is that, so really these are what we have that we're tasting are the first three releases that this distillery has done, aside from one other release that they actually put out that we had a very small cropping of. You saw those like itty bitty bottles that were at the gift shop. We basically got, we had one of those that was just their newborn. So it was, I want to say, God, Roland, it was a 16-month-old whiskey? I
18
believe that it
18
was
months
18
old.
months.
Yeah,
Yeah,
18
so it was 18 months, and that was kind of like, that was like the draft, right? That was like the first draft going like, all right, cool, this is what's coming. And then these whiskeys, I think, are these interesting building blocks, and you'll see by the time you get to the third one, like they all have these very distinct personalities. And I actually like, I think that's kind of the interesting bit of these is like, Kanosuke is building to what will be, I mean, now it's going to be a consistent release, but these are all these kind of like, all right, cool, this is like these things we want to highlight. And I totally agree with you, Kate. Like, I think that there are things that there are these funny, like little tweaks and pluses and minuses with each of these. And I think that's kind of, I don't know. I think that's maybe one of the things that me personally, as a whiskey drinker, I really enjoy is that like each one has its own bizarre personality to it. And I kind of switch back and forth between which one is my favorite on a given day. But I don't know. That's just something I think it's a very valid point. I just think it's kind of an interesting drafting of how these all are coming together to build towards something consistent.
I'm actually really enjoying this second one. It's pardon the weird note, but it's sort of like a brown gravy like you would get on a Boeuf Bourguignon. It's got that intensity to it where it's got lots of different textures, lots of different little flavors. The red wine comes out of it, the lemon tea, but it's also got that earthiness to it that makes me think of brown gravy. It's really weird, but I mean, it's so interestingly complex.
I think there is something about this one, and maybe it's also just the fact that like because we didn't actually get to do an official release of this because there just wasn't enough of it to distribute in the US. Like when I've only tried this maybe one or two times, but I was like instantly was like, okay, there's something there that's Moorish. Like I'm not sure what it is, but I want to keep going back and checking it out. And I like that. I don't know. Like I think the beef bourguignon thing is that's an awesome call.
Well, it also gets into that slight bitterness in the finish, which I would think would be, if you think in terms of something that's a bit more savory than sweet. So I know it's Boeuf Bourguignon is a weird tasting note for a whiskey, but that's kind of where I went with it. And I mean, this is just delicious.
Yeah.
That's what's fun about this single malt, right? You get this really truly 360 view of taste where something like bourbon, I'm not picking on bourbon because it's so controlled in terms of the ingredients and how you age it and what you age it in, that it's probably only a sliver of what you get in single malt, which is fun.
Yeah. And Jane, the beef bourguignon makes sense to me, right? Because there's a salinity to this, right? Because it's aged by the sea. And then there's the umami that you get from the soju casks. And yeah, I definitely see what you're saying. And anyway, this one's just a really fun one to play with.
It's quite the chameleon.
All right, I'm gonna move on to the next slide, which we can continue to chat. But people have asked what's next. And again, back to Chris and I's promise about making sure that what's coming in, and we're going to share as much as we can. I think one of the challenges that I've seen with Japanese whiskey over the last few years, especially during COVID, was just the fact that there was so much in the market, and it wasn't clear to people what was in that liquid and what people were doing next, right? And we plan on changing that. So as we kind of come to the market in a bigger way, over the next year or so, and frankly, a lot of the brands that Chris and his team are bringing to market are doing exactly the same thing, because we're all encouraging, and the view I take is that rising tide raises all boats. We really want to make sure people understand what's happening in Japanese whiskey, so you're not afraid of it. Just because you see kanji and a samurai doesn't mean it's Japanese whiskey. It means it's probably a product from someone that was pretty smart in Japan, but it doesn't mean it's true Japanese whiskey. So we intend to change that in terms of our transparency. In fact, after the last slide, I'll give you my contact info. So if you ever have any questions, feel free to ask, because we're not trying to hide anything that we're doing, nor any other producers that Chris and team are representing. But
And I think
since you're here,
actually,
go ahead.
oh, sorry, Roland, please
No,
finish.
go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, just because I didn't want to jump in on this at the beginning, and I feel like this is something that we kind of talked about when we did Mars, but just because there is this kind of the world of Japanese whiskey is kind of still full of cloak and dagger, like nobody really knows what it is. It's just like Roland said, generally speaking, if you see like kanji on a bottle, you see some evocative imagery, the thought is, okay, immediately, like that's got to be very Japanese. When in reality, still, even though there are guidelines that have been agreed on as to what Japanese whiskey can be bottled as, the tax code still states that anything that is bottled in Japan can be whatever it is. So that means it can still be, if you want to go back to the rice whiskey thing and say that, or this is like to confuse this issue, but it's really important. I think this is why these guys have such a fantastic story, is that so many Japanese whiskeys that are on the American market right now are actually barrel-aged shochu. These are barley shochus that have been barrel-aged for extended periods of time in things like sherry casks. This doesn't mean that it's bad. It doesn't mean that you don't need to say that it's whiskey. It's just that this is kind of confusing the issue about what Japanese whiskey is. So when we're talking about guys like this, they're trying to do everything as much Japan as possible in terms of like this being a single malt whiskey. And so, not trying to kind of throw like banter about the word like fake Japanese whiskey, because I think that gets a little bit reductive, but it's still good to remember that sometimes like you got to ask a few more questions about what you're actually drinking, where it's made, if this is a whiskey that was made in Japan, or if this was a whiskey that was teaspooned, if this is something that's mostly Scottish distillate with a little bit of Japanese new make in it. There's a lot of that going on right now. And I think something that I find really exciting about these guys, just like them using their history as being shochu producers to kind of upload those styles and those techniques into modern single malt distillation practices, but also the fact that they're using Japanese made stills. They're starting to incorporate Japanese multiple barley. All of these bits that are kind of drawing the focus back to a product that actually is of the country. So, just food for thought, but that's something that like, it's just an interesting kind of crossroads that these guys are at right now. And they're definitely on the crest of that wave of kind of redefining what Japanese whiskey is. So anyways, that's my 2 cents on it. Roland, apologies. I get long-winded.
No, this is great, but it just kind of gives me an opportunity for a 30-second tirade on this. It takes two hands to clap on this stuff, right? So I think, people have been blaming the Japanese for producing quote unquote fake Japanese whiskey. Really, it's because the environment allows them to do it. The U.S. doesn't distinguish the difference. As long as it's a spirit that's been aged in a barrel, the U.S. actually by regulation defines that as whiskey. So they're actually just taking advantage of the law here. In fact, they don't sell it in Japan because they can't call it whiskey in Japan. The other key part of history that people may not understand is that for nearly 95 years, there are really only 2 distilleries that existed, Suntory and Nikka. And if you don't know, though the media will portray these as kind of partners and one guy went from one distillery to another distillery, started another one, they were essentially like the Hatfields and McCoys, they were not friendly to each other. They were warring families because, you know, the founder of Nika was essentially fired from Centauri. And I'm happy to explain that to you in a different session. But because of that, unlike Scotland, where people traded, you know, whiskey, they traded grain whiskey for single malt and other single malt for other single malt and other grains. They were allowed to make blends. Japanese never had that opportunity. So because there was no licenses, there's only kind of two major distilleries. There was never a lot of sharing. So when Japanese licensing opened up in 2015 and Kanosuke and others got their licenses, everyone jumped on it. So up until 2017, there were 7 licensed distilleries. I think last I checked, there was over 100. So in the last 7 years, you've had 90 plus distilleries come on board in Japan, and they're going to think differently about what whiskey looks like. So the pretty easy way to get it, if it's not Centauri, Nika, Mars, or Fuji, if you see something older than 7 years, it's probably not distilled in Japan, or it's not barley whiskey, because there was no license for you to distill it there as whiskey, because the licensing only opened up in 2015-16. So, and it's going to take you a few years to build a distillery and distill it and whatnot. So if you see 18-year-old quote unquote whiskey from Japan now, it's probably not real. Just, you know, it's simple math, right? So we'll let everybody make their own call about what they want to buy and what they want to drink. But, you know, that's just my kind of guidance on you know, how whiskey should be thought about moving forward. Okay, off my soapbox or whiskey box. Give you a preview. You guys saw it at the real thing, but this is coming. Chris and team will be bringing this to market very soon, which is the 2023 limited edition. And you can see this is a stark difference from the other casks and bottles you'll see, because the other ones have been, you know, the first one was kind of a light color one, and you'll see some texture on every bottle. This texture represents the beach and the sand, which is quote unquote consistency. The second one is kind of a sea blue. You'll see the sea during the day here. And I think Kate was the one who talked about this disjointed, but I think it was intentional in terms of, you know, how the sea comes in and out with waves. You're going to get different flavors. And as Chris rightly said, it's an experimentation, right? And the third one, which we're going to drink in a moment, you're going to see the Sunset, which is our kind of, you know, distillery view. And we love the Sunset as part of our history, part of the place that we are, and the mellow bar in which you finish up. So this new one is a bold departure from that. This is the Angry Sea. This is the sea that you'll see in December and January, which what Hiromi-san showed you. But on a dark and rainy day, you're going to get a lot of that fierce wind and gale force winds and really cold weather, which leads to this expression being peated. But it's a different peat. It's kind of like an Islay peat, where it's a northern Islay peat where it's light and fruity and sweet. And I think even if you don't like peat, you might like this one because it's a very different taste profile than what you may see. So take a look at that coming to the market very, very soon. And you first heard it here, because I don't think we've not done a distillery tour for anyone, right, Chris? At least not here in the States.
No,
So
no,
you
this
guys
is
are the
definitely a first.
Yeah. And Hiromi-san just sent me a nice message saying that she thanks all of you for being so kind to her. So, all right. Here's another picture of the sea. You can kind of see the what we call the Angry Sea. And another important announcement. Throughout the year, you're going to see this coming. So right now we have the limited edition 2022. Again, we're gonna taste that in a second. But you're going to see 3 new expressions come to the market. As Chris mentioned, the one in the middle is our flagship single malt product. That will come to the markets, let's say February, March-ish, if not earlier. It's available in some states already, but in California, it will be February, March. And it's our first core expression. And I can tell you, folks, it's wonderful, and it's going to be priced outstanding. You're going to love it. You're going to run your store. You're going to buy it, and you're going to buy another one, because next time you go back, it won't be there. we're so happy with it and really proud that we're going to bring it to the market at a price where you'll see a marked difference from what everyone else is doing, even the more experienced guys. And I'm gonna leave it at that because I don't talk about pricing. And then on the left, you'll see a second item which is coming up, which Vadim started asking about. This is our Hioki pot still, and it's made at our Hioki distillery, and I'll come back to that in a second. That's the same distillery in which we make our soju, but we make this in a style of Irish pot still. So we're calling this a Japanese pot still. The reason why we have to call it a grain whiskey is because it is not all 100% malted barley. We only use barley, but it's partly malted barley and the rest is unmalted barley. But we're not using other grains here. We're only using barley, so it's a very expensive product. But we're doing in a single pot still, and we're doing it in that Irish style. So we're calling it a Japanese style pot still, and it just imparts. I actually think this is a bourbon drinker's whiskey. I get a lot of like, if you've drank wheat bourbon or wheated bourbon, you get a lot of that nutty butterscotch flavors. You get a lot of that in the Hioki pot still. I absolutely adore it. It's going to be on my shelf as a daily. And then on the right hand side, you're also going to see a double, what we're calling a double distillery product. Now, this is a true blended whiskey. This was actually a vision of both the Kamasa brothers. So as we mentioned, Kanosuke is their grandfather. After our founder built the whiskey distiller, his younger brother took over the grain and soju distillery, which is where we make our gin and other things. And they wanted to do something where they honored their grandfather. So they said, what better thing to do than take distillate from each of the distilleries that we now run, put them together and release a double distillery product. And our kind of internal line of this is two singles make a great double. And it's really in honor of their grandfather, which you kind of see this trend that this family is really about honor and tradition. And I'm really proud to be able to kind of speak to that because it rings true when not only when I speak to it, but when you meet the family and you spend time with the brothers or the father or their mother, who's incredibly gracious, you'll find that this is just a family that you really want to support. So these three whiskeys will be the kind of core lineup we have coming. And you'll see other limited edition products coming as well as a awesome single cask program that will probably be one of the first ones coming to the States with a single cask program that is Japanese. So really excited to kind of talk about all these things and give you a preview of what's coming. So I think that's it for kind of what's coming. I'm going to make you drink again because you're probably thirsty, and this is our last expression. And if you're not drunk, I think Vadim has a lot more whiskey he can pour for you later. But this is the last bottle that we're going to share tonight, which is our 2022 limited edition, which you can probably guess by its color and whatnot, and kind of what I've outlined here, that it's a heavy sherry cask influence. So why don't we pour that? We can talk a little bit about that, and then I'm going to open it up to kind of questions and answers. This is the same warehouse that Hiromi-san shared before she left. So that's all the formal presentation I have. I have a lot of other slides and pictures I can show about the distillery and manufacturing if we want to cover that, but just want to get your thoughts on this whiskey and then answer any questions you had. Or if you're sick of Chris and I, then we can go away.
No, actually, Jane reminded me of a tradition we have that I should have done while we had our guests from Japan on. Are they still here? I'm gonna kick you out for just a second, kick you out of the sharing.
Sure.
And what were your associates in Japan called again?
Hiromi-san and Mami-san. I don't know if they're still on.
I see they're open, but I don't know if they're still here.
Yosan is on as well.
Okay. Well, either way, we invite everyone to turn on their camera for just a second and raise a glass so we can get our group photo as is per our tradition. So I'm hoping some people will jump on. There we go. Elijah finally finished the soup. That's good. All right. Yes, we got some people. There we go. Oh, cheers. Thank you so much, Roland and Chris and Kanosuke. God, I can't pronounce
Yeah.
that.
Yeah,
All right.
you got it.
Well, cheers, everyone.
Cheers, guys.
Perfect. And I encourage you all
Oh,
to vote in the poll.
I see Tatsu there. Tatsu, can you say hi to everyone?
Hello. Thanks for the Butcher's birthday, participating in the Butcher's birthday, and I hope you enjoy the whiskey. And personally, I hope you come down to Kagoshima, and then we'll take you someplace special. Okay, let's just keep in touch, and I hope you enjoy our whiskey. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tatsu-san.
Go back to this here.
Let us know what your favorite expression was, since you're tasting the third one now.
Tough call because I felt like they were all unicorns. You know, so
Well, thanks for that, Kate. We like them. Any thoughts on tasting of the 2022?
the 2022 for me, I taste the sherry in it, but then in the finish, I kind of get the bite of the tannins from the red wine. So I don't know how much red wine is in there, but in my mind, there's got to be some because I kind of, your tannins are something you kind of bite into, and I can taste that on the finish.
So this one I can probably say, if I knew, I would tell you, because I don't even know. Tatsu doesn't even know. We leave that to the blenders.
Yeah.
We just know that it's in there.
But this one is not the same, even though there's maybe an unevenness in it, there wasn't that bipolar thing that was going on in the second one. So yeah, these are all just really interesting and fun to taste.
Any other
I
thoughts?
do think it's pretty interesting with all of these, or at least, the two that we've had in the market, which is the 2021 first edition, then the 2022 limited edition. It's kind of like sports teams. It's like people just have their favorite. I haven't run into too many people who have carried these both and been like, I love them both equally. It's like there's very clearly like one that kind of ekes out over the other, and it's almost like a dead heat like between the two, which I think is really fascinating.
So if I had just gone through them once, then the second edition would have been the clear loser for me.
Right.
But since I've gone back now and I've tasted all three of them again, I just have a totally different take on it. And I'm much more fascinated now with all of them, separately. So yeah, I can understand. There was a clear winner the first time around. Yeah.
It'll be interesting. The that flagship single malt that'll be coming out relatively soon. So that is not a cask strength whiskey. That'll be a slightly lower proof, but still it's got some guts. It's 96 and change, I believe.
Correct.
It is a really, really lovely balancing of kind of all of these things. Like, it is the sum of its parts in the best possible way, I think. And probably, I would argue, like the most approachable, not necessarily because of proof point, but literally just because it's kind of encapsulates what these guys are trying to do. So I'm just going to dangle that little carrot out there for everybody, just to, keep that one on the horizon.
That's a huge carrot. Which one is that again?
So that'll be the flagship single malt. So it was the that last slide of the 3 bottles. It was the one that was dead center with a white label and the gold sun on it. Hopefully we'll have that rocking out by like end of January, mid-February, somewhere in there.
Do you know if any will be available in Northwest Florida? Miami gets everything. Northwest Florida, we don't.
I'm not sure directly in Northwest Florida, but I can tell you that like both of the retailers that we're gonna kind of promote today ship everywhere in the US.
Okay.
So that's definitely like if you're interested in picking up a bottle of these, that's not a problem. I do think that right now, I gotta double check, but the 2021 is down to scraps. You can kind of hunt down some of those bottles online, but generally what's left available is the one that we're drinking right now, which is the Kanosuke 2022 limited edition.
Okay.
Which looks like
Were you guys going to be at the New Orleans Wine and Food Experience by any chance?
We're not. We're gonna do Tails this year, so we'll be at Tails the cocktail, but I don't think we had plans to do the food experience.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Hello, can you hear me? This is Tats from Japan. Let me give you a little tips about the flagship, the single malt Kanosuke. Okay?
Please.
Hi, sir. So basically, so you tasted the first edition and second edition and limited edition 2022. So these three experience for the blendings are all brought together for the coming single malt Kanosuke. So, well, I'm sure that when you taste our flagship, yeah, we call it flagship internally, and if you taste it, I'm sure you get all those three bottles at kind of expression in one. And of course, it's for 96 proof. It's more kind of mellower, I should say, because all the other one is very high proof. Sometimes you get the bite, but it's mellowed down to 48% ABV, 96 proof. So I hope you enjoy it. I hope I'm making sense. Great.
you are. That was great.
That was fantastic.
I recall there was a question about the distillery design. I don't know who asked that. Maybe Vadim. The answer is we actually don't know. There's a lot of speculation. It was done by a pretty famous architect. Maybe Tatsu, can you share anything you might know about how the distillery was designed? Why it was designed in a U shape?
Oh, yeah. So basically, like, as Hiromi and you explained that basically talking about, our founder, Komasa-san, yeah, he went around and he visited many distilleries in Scotland and the US, actually. And he went to a distillery called Ballinderloch in Speyside in Scotland. And they had a U shape, and he thought it was very convenient and for both aspects, from production and both for the tours. So therefore, that's why we implemented the same ideas. Let me talking about the colors of the distilleries. Like most distilleries would have kind of blackish colors, just that like talking about Maker's Mark. Because we get those kind of fungus, so it tends to get very dirty. But still, we wanted to match the nature of the Kagoshima, so that's why we're beside the sea. So we wanted to be match the color of the beach. So that's why we have kind of whitish colors. Yeah. Great. Okay.
I imagine it's windy, or it can be windy by the sea.
Yes.
It is especially windy, I should say. If you come down, and sometimes we have plane kite around the distilleries, you can, enjoy here perfectly.
So I would think, a little bit like what Vadim mentioned earlier, when you go and it's a U shape like that, when you walk into the U, the wind dies down. And then that's what Vadim said, it's like a hug, welcome. And it makes sense to me, especially because sometimes you just got to get out of the wind, right? The wind is annoying. And so you walk into the U shape and the wind dies down, and it's probably a nice welcome.
I think that's a great idea. Yeah, I think I'm going to use that for my next explanation. Yeah, we'll have again, avoiding winds, because last year's whiskey festival, it was way too windy, and it was quite disastrous. But as you mentioned, yeah, we'll explain it's our hug from for the business come.
So you got to credit Vadim for the hug bit. So.
Definitely, yeah, we owe you a dram when you come down.
I'll take the dram, but I'm pretty sure I heard the tour guide test say that. That wasn't my idea.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was another question about Hiromi-san mentioned in elementary school. So we're expanding so quickly. We can't keep up with our warehousing. So one of the, as you know, in rural Japan, a lot of people are moving out of rural Japan into the cities. And because of that, there's been a lot of real estate that has been available. So in one of our acquisitions, instead of taking the time to build a warehouse, which takes time, we actually purchased an old elementary school that had been abandoned. Not abandoned, but just not in use anymore because there just wasn't the demand. It's about a 5-minute drive from the distillery, and our intention initially was to use the school as our corporate headquarters. But instead, what we've done is we actually built our own corporate headquarters across the street, but we've used the school now for aging. So we've turned the gym into essentially a rig house. So it looks like this. It's actually obviously a lot more modern, with the racks and whatnot, but you can kind of go up to the second level. You still see the scoreboard and the timer from the school. And because it has the high ceilings, it actually serves as 6 or 7 racks high for for aging. And we've actually used the elementary school offices for keeping some of the ingredients for our gin products. So it's actually been very nice. So it's a property we have. We may use it for other things in the future, but right now, because of the need for aging and we just don't have the space, the elementary school gym that we kind of joked about is actually one of our aging warehouses.
That's actually kind of hilarious. I love that.
Yeah, it's really cool. You'll kind of look in, like the principal's office is a big sack of like juniper berries. So
Everyone has voted for their favorite expression tonight, and you can't take it back. You already voted. We got last 2 stragglers. 3, 2, 1. Roland, Chris, you guys want to guess what the favorite expression of the night was?
I'm gonna guess the sherry.
So it's 22.
2022.
I'm gonna go with
Ton of stuff.
2021 first.
All right. We've locked in your answers. The answer is
I'm gonna go with
We just
oh, look at that.
you're both right.
you're both right.
Dead heat. Nice.
That's funny.
Somebody earlier was saying that, like, Chris was saying that these always go head to head, and somebody likes one, somebody likes the other, but they're always very close. I mean, 37%, like they're pretty dead on. 2 votes over, it would have been all tied.
It's funny.
So that's fun.
Okay. Any other questions? Let me I'm just gonna flash this so you can see it. As I promised, if you ever need to ask me any questions, want to know certain things about what we're doing, feel free to ping on my email, which is there, so everyone can see it, my IG or our distillery IG, or ping Chris if there's things that you need.
I'm always in hailing distance.
So, Roland, I don't know. I always worry because I'm worried I'm going to step over a line. So anyway, you can tell me if I'm bad and wrong by saying this, but in general, my experience with Japanese whiskey is that it's very balanced, right? It's pretty much basically smooth, right? What I was surprised about with this whiskey is how edgy it was. And I don't mean that in a bad way, for sure. I basically mean it in a good way. Anyway, I'm curious, is this edginess and uniqueness that you guys have, are you going to continue that? Or do you think you're going to get into, because you're brand new, right? So I know you're just getting things started. Or do you think you're going to get into your, you get your flagship going and your standards going, and those are all going to be nice, well-balanced?
Yeah, fair question. And I'll I'll answer it. I'm not going to directly answer it because I don't think that's fair. But I will say it in this way. Remember that Japanese whiskey for the better part of 100 years has been two companies. So you've tried, when you say Japanese whiskey, you're really talking about two distilleries. And we've had Chichibu and Mars and Fuji, Gotamba, and a few others pop up. But I'm sure that when you say Japanese whiskey, the majority of the Japanese whiskey you've been drinking have come from two companies that are well established, and we kind of talked about what they've done. I think that now you're seeing, with over 100 new license holders coming in the last 10 years, you're going to see a difference in how they view whiskey. And no different than probably what our parents thought about life and what millennials think about life, right? It's going to be different. Not one's right or wrong, but they're going to be different. And kind of like what happened in wine, where you have old world and new world. They're just very different perspectives on how to make the same thing. So not that one is better or different or edgier or more mellow. It's just going to be different. And I think over time, you'll see how each distillery probably develops a flavor profile. We believe in kind of consistently reinventing ourselves, leveraging kind of our experience in distilling over 140 years, whether that be, soju at one point, now whiskey. In the future, we may do other things, but we expect to kind of keep pushing on that leading edge of what spirits should look like from a Japanese producer. But whether that produces a spirit that you call edgy or I call mellow, I don't think is the right answer. The answer is it's going to be what you think of it and whether you enjoy it or not. And I think that's going to be true of everyone kind of making their own choices. So no right or wrong answer. I think it's a really good observation. I would agree with you, but I just think they're different right now. And it's going to take a little bit more time as the new cohort of whiskeys come out to give you a profile that you could say that's truly Japanese now, because I think that definition is going to change quickly because of the number of new whiskeys coming out. Chris, do you have a different view on that?
No, I mean, not necessarily. I would agree with what you said. I mean, I think that, your point about the history of Japanese whiskey, and, I think you mentioned the 100 years thing. This is really important, is that basically, November 2024 is going to be the centennial for when the first distillate was pulled off the stills at Yamazaki. So it's still a very young category comparatively. That said, you had these two major companies that, Suntory is owned by, it's a massive conglomerate. Like, it has an opinion. Nikka is owned by a huge beer company. This is not saying that it's a bad thing, but they line up in tracks. And I think when you're talking about historically about Japanese whiskey from the, we'll just say from the American standpoint, you want to define what it is. You want to say it's this way so you can characterize it as such. And I think that because we haven't had the palate that maybe we think we normally would with, in Scotland, you have all the different distillation regions. In America, we kind of accepted that, bourbon is this way because it has these rules and regulations attached to it. Same thing with rye. You find what your bounding boxes are and you know what to expect. Those definitions have never been quite as clearly defined in Japanese whiskey. So it kind of leaves a little bit more to the imagination. And the imagination tends to wander to refinement, smoothness, roundness, kind of balance. But there have been plenty of examples over the decades of punchy, big whiskeys that were being made in Japan as early as the 70s and 80s. But a lot of those distilleries fell off because they weren't able to sustain themselves. So we never got to experience them. So there are a couple different things. Besides that, you can go back to talking about the concept of wa, or the concept of balance, in terms of like how things work with blending in Japan. I think that's a big part of it. But, with Kanosuke reaching into their past as shochu distillers and what the land provides for them and how they're kind of uploading that into how they're making whiskey, you've got Mars going into really leaning into the duality of the terroir of the distillers that they have, between having a very cold climate and a very warm climate with what they're doing. Then, Chichibu is just like, they're just rocking, very, very strong, complex whiskeys. Then you've got Akeshi way the hell up in Hokkaido who just want to make peated whiskey, like very, very different. So I think we're going to start seeing this kind of evolution of this next wave of what we consider to be Japanese whiskey. And I think it's a really exciting point to get on if we can kind of like weave through what is out there and what flavors we all enjoy.
Yeah, no, that's a good point that you make about the history basically of Japanese whiskey. There's really only been the two distilleries, and that's, I mean, we've had a bit more than the two here, right? But still, it's very limited. And but I'm excited about this. I'm excited about the next chapter for Japanese whiskey making and what it's going to bring, especially if there's 100 new distilleries. You know, come on, that's crazy.
Super cool, right? And kind of like, I mean, you know, it mirrors what's happening, or rather, I would say that, you know, Ireland is kind of mirroring Japan, but I mean, the same thing is happening there, where you had, you know, the massive contenders in Ireland just kind of dominating the field. And now you have a bunch of really young distillers who are like, no, we want to make whiskey on our own terms. We're not going to make whiskey like Middleton. We're doing something else. It's not to say that Middleton whiskey is bad or inferior. It's just, let's do something different now.
Different.
It's pretty rad.
All right. Any other questions? Thoughts?
These are all delicious, and we're looking forward to more expressions from you guys. Thank you very much for being here tonight and sharing this with us. This is an exciting new frontier for Japanese whiskey, but whiskey in general. I mean, these are all three were delicious, but they were very different, and I'm glad we get to try them side by side.
And I feel like you're gonna push the envelope for the world of whiskey, not just for Japanese whiskey. I'm really excited.
Thank you.
I haven't said that yet.
Hey, Chris,
It's very
you
kind
want,
of you. Thank you.
Chris, you want to mention where, if anybody's interested in bottles, where they might find this?
Yeah, definitely. So I mean, I know a lot of you guys are in Southern California, so I would say going to Everson Royce. If you don't want to go directly to the store, Joe is wonderful. He stocks all of this stuff. He has a wonderful selection. He also ships anywhere in the United States, so that's a great place to go and get a bottle at a good price. Also, I always have to plug Umami Mart in Northern California because they're the only shop I know of in the United States that is specifically dealing only in Japanese shochu, sake, and whiskey and gin. Woman run, super grassroots, lovely people. They're massive, massive fans of Kanosuke. They will always stock it. So that's another place, another great place to go. I think that I'm not sure. Did you have those things? Did you have both those addresses in links for the tasting?
Boom.
Hey, look at that! Like a pro.
Got one of them. I didn't get the
We'll start.
Love it.
But yeah, those are definitely the spots. Right now, it's because we released the 2021 and the 22 last year. The 2021 we just didn't have quite as much of. These are, by the way, pretty sure long gone in Japan. These are like very,
These
very,
are-
very, very sold out.
If you like them, I highly recommend you get them because in Japan, they're up on secondary auction sites and they trade like hotcakes because I'm not tooting our own horn, but we're the kind of hottest craft brand in Japan right now. We can't keep things on the shelf. So people in Japan are asking me to bring Kanosuke back to them in Japan, which is quite ironic. But I hope we'll get this kind of reaction 6 months from now when you see all of our launch material. But I'm really happy you guys are going to be you're the first that we've done in terms of a masterclass together with Chris and I, and I hope that we can count on you as ambassadors for our whiskey, not only for our whiskey, but just our thinking in the way that we're thinking about whiskey, because we're trying to do it the right way where everyone understands what we're doing, and there's nothing that we're hiding.
Yeah, I was going to say one of the things that I appreciated about the whole night was just the level of transparency that you presented the whole way through. Is that's, not dissing any of the other Japanese whiskeys that we've seen, but the transparency that you displayed was way above and beyond what we've seen with other Japanese whiskeys, and I thought that was really impressive. And that was, I think, one of the big highlights that, especially that in that on-site tour was amazing. So thank you so much for that part of it. That was amazing.
Well, you're welcome. Thank you, Jason.
Sorry, there was a question in chat. I just posted a URL without a hyperlink on it, but the second shop is Umami Mart in Oakland, California.
And I think there's a question about the distributor. The distributor is Skurnik for California.
Yep.
And if you're in another state, ask Chris, and he can probably share with you who the distributor is.
Yeah, I know there was a question about Minnesota, and I'm gonna do that on direct email for you.
Great. Other questions, comments?
When can we expect some distillery folks visiting us in LA?
Maybe sooner than you think.
Okay. Please let me
Yeah.
know when you guys are coming out. We'd love to host you.
Great. I
As,
will let you.
as you mentioned, I got plenty of whiskey to share.
Yeah, we were in LA
Yeah.
in November, and I think we may be coming again first week of September. Or sorry, first week of February, but I'll let you know.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, and actually, if you guys are, I'm sure you guys have been out a few places, but definitely like whenever I make it down to Los Angeles and hang out there and just want to go and have like maybe give myself like a nice little treat of like a good pour of something, I usually end up going to Wolf and Crane in Japantown because those guys do have the best selection of Japanese whiskey I've seen in California. The owners are incredibly nice people. They're very, very sweet. It's definitely a neighborhood bar and it can get pretty lively. But if you're there early enough, it's like, all the good stuff is there. And it's a lot of stuff that you will not find anywhere else.
Hey,
So I
Chris,
would
I
definitely recommend going
haven't
there.
invited you to my bar yet. I have a pretty good.
No,
Japanese
you
whiskey.
haven't, dude.
Come
Roland
on
and I
over.
don't live that far from one another. We're only about like a 10-minute drive away from one another.
You're all invited. Come to Berkeley.
I was just up in where was I? It was Walnut Creek.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
About
4 days.
about 15 minutes away from Chris and I. Maybe
Yeah.
20.
Yeah, everybody's busy. I went to, where did I go to? Chris, I texted you. I went to Hops and Scotch.
Yep.
Yeah, and those guys are sitting on a metric butt ton of expensive whiskey. It's kind of crazy.
Is that a formal expression, Chris? I actually like that. Formal
Yeah,
expression.
actually it is. It is. That's one of the isms. No, those guys actually have a lot of dead stock Mars Humbo whiskey that was released back in maybe 2015. That doesn't exist anymore. And I haven't seen those bottles on anybody else's shelf in the East Bay.
Nice. I'll have to check it out.
Yeah.
And the Marriott across the street is awesome. So that's right.
Oh, so it was just a layup for you. That's perfect.
Yeah, I did not plan the hotel based on the bar. It just so happened.
Oh, dude, yeah, I'm almost positive that there's no other dedicated whiskey bar in that part of the East Bay. There's some other bars, but you seem to just have your little divining rod out and you just made it over there.
It worked out. It was a good trip.
So I'm curious, maybe the next time we do a tasting with you, you could offer some suggestions of food pairing, because I feel like the umami flavors that I tasted in all your spirits probably pair well with various foods. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong there.
We'd be happy with that.
Yeah, but if you have a sense, then maybe you could make some suggestions. That'd be fun.
Oh, Chris and Roland don't know. When I was packing up these kits, I made a last minute jet to an Asian food store and picked up a bunch of Japanese snacks. They were not very happy with me because I was like, I need Japanese and like made in Japan. So whatever, I got some like mochi and candy, like all made in Japan, and I threw it in people's kits without warning or explanation. So
Awesome.
that's where that came from.
I got a light, I think it was a lychee gummy and I was shocked how it was good. It went well. I think it went well with the excellence.
Totally.
Right?
Oh,
So that
what's
triggered the thought.
what's really interesting is that so when we make our soju products, we make them at different times of year when the produce is ready. And emo soju, the sweet potato soju, we make it in a very, very specific time, which is kind of late summer, early fall. There is a variety of emo that when cut, it smells exactly like lychee.
Oh, wow.
And it's
There
a
is
wonderful product. It's amazing.
There's actually for you guys in LA, next week in LA is actually, God, starting tomorrow, I apologize, is actually Shochu week. So there are a bunch of bars that are participating in it, and they have guest bartenders coming in from Japan, working with different shochu brands that'll be promoting the culture and essentially doing cocktails with shochu. One of them is called Dayame. Dayame is what Roland is talking about. It is literally musket grapes and lychee in a glass. It is not actually, it doesn't have lychee in it. It is sweet potato, but that is exactly what it smells and tastes like. It is totally unique. Really, really cool stuff.
Excellent. All right.
Hey, Tatsu, did you hear that suggestion about an official food pairing or food notes? I think that's an excellent idea. We should work on that when we're in Kagoshima together.
Yeah, definitely, because Kagoshima has great local foods. Having a match with our whiskey, yeah, I think we could promote the Kagoshima and having tasting it both together. I think you're gonna feel the Kagoshima in your mouth. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's gonna be perfect. Let's do so.
Chris, join us, and we'll have the official food tasting notes when you're there in February.
Yeah, definitely. I something tells me it's going to be a lot of grilled meat.
It's gonna be a lot of fun. Okay.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so very much. Any other questions? Any other feedback? Well, we're gonna look forward to hosting you again, hopefully in the future with some new expressions and hearing about food pairings. Chris, we look forward to having you on for any other of your brands. Always love having you on. But
Thank you very much, guys.
everyone tonight, thank you so much. Thank you for being here, and we'll see you next week.
All right. Thanks,
Awesome.
everybody. Good night.
Thanks, everyone. Very much appreciated. Night, guys.
Thank you. Bye.
Night.
Bye bye.